Did it finally work? I guess so. Can you hear me? I'm sorry about being so late to this thing. I had everything set up to play guitar and do all that stuff. And of course, at the last minute, YouTube starts shooting me messages that not received data from streaming or whatever. So that's extremely frustrating considering I've been working on this for about 2 hours trying to make sure it was right. And of course, every test video was fine. And then we do this and it's not fine. So I don't know. Because now I had to abandon what I was using as a streaming service. And now I'm back to where I was, I guess, when I started, like the first time. So I'm not, if I play guitar again, it's just going to do the same crap it was doing. So that really bums me out. 10 minutes late and not able to do anything about that. So I don't understand. Well, I guess how's everybody doing? What's everybody up to? Okay, so let's see what me and the boys have been doing. Me and the bastards, US bastards, were over here last weekend, and we were doing a lot of tracking and recording in the studio here. So this is the Marshall room or whatever, but the next two rooms over, there is 1, 2, 3, a couple rooms in front of me, each with guitar cabs, bass cabs, stuff like that. And then in the furthest end of this basement, there's a big, large room with a drum set in there. So we were able to mic up the kit. All of us, we had amplifiers in the room with us, but all the cabinets were in isolated rooms. So that way we could all jam together live, record it that way, and not have to worry about bleed and stuff like that. And of course, once we were done with the drums, we brought more of the amplifiers in here that we were working with, just so we could finish tracking in here and not in the other room. Just so we could all kind of sit around the control room and chill and talk shit and come up with different ideas for the parts. Maybe we're play them a little different. I picked some stuff different that we were doing it kind of live. And once you kind of hear everything under a microscope, you adjust to make the song as good as you can. So, but yeah, it's definitely overkill. Let's see. Yeah. So that's what we used for the session, and we're not done. We're got maybe like 2 more days on it with incidental guitars and some leads and stuff like that. But 6 amplifiers for 6 tracks. It's actually more simple than you would think. I basically have, for my guitar, for example, it was a JCM 800, a 2204. And underneath that, I used a modified JMP with cascaded stages. So no pedals, no effects. Basically, so the 800's cleaner and the cascaded JMP is kind of dirty. So that was kind of the way I wanted the tone to be. 1 amp a little punchy, 1 amp with the sauce on it, and if you record with too much distortion, you don't get the punchiness, but I don't really think you need a lot of distortion for punk rock and roll anyway. I mean, it's kind of a feel thing at a certain point, but the more distortion you get, the more not things aren't going to poke out, the more things are going to get buried and mushy. So that was kind of the idea behind the 2 amplifier thing. So we may not even use all of the microphones and all the cabinets and everything, but it was like, hey, let's experiment and have some fun and see what kind of tones we can come up with. And we actually used like a PV cabinet with G12K 85s. Both of us did. And then I used like a 74 Marshall cab with G12H speakers. And then the other cab, I think, had some Scumbags in it. So, and the reason for the extra heads is we did one other track that was a little cleaner than that. It was very stripped down and subdued rock. So rather than come in here and go back and forth if we're cutting different parts and changing the settings on the amp. It was like, well, let's just do a totally different amp for that. We'll keep the clean amp and we'll have a cleaner, like a super lead cranked plexi sound or something for some of this stuff. And I think it worked out really well. And therefore we're able to kind of bounce back and forth, you know, like, hey, I'm tired of working on this one. Or you come in the next day and want to work on something else, or come back, and it just lets you be a little bit more flexible in the studio instead of trying to do everything linearly. So you could absolutely have done this record with just one amp, you know, but hey, where's the fun in that? If you got it, just fucking do it. So that's what it is. Yeah, I mean, you could coax all them tones out of I mean, an 800 and a tube scream or a JMP super lead, whatever, you know, like you could kind of get them to do everything you need them to do. You don't need a ton of amps. And also the bass, we did the same thing with the bass. You know, I used like an old 70s SVT over there for the clean, undistorted, big, punchy low end, because we didn't do any DIs for this. And then above that, it was a JCM 800 bass amp and a super bass. And they're both dialed in for slightly different tones. The super bass we made less gritty, and the 800 bass, you know, we got that for all the dirt. And it was important, just like mixing. It's like we tested them outside in the room, played through them, said, oh, this sounds good. Once we put microphones on them, though, we started dialing them in a little bit different to kind of work together. And, you know, you need to make space for the other instruments in the mix too. So all that stuff is super fun. But that's what I've been up to. And tomorrow I'm going to go work on some lawnmowers and smoke cigars and cuss in the yard. So just wanted to say hey to everyone. It was somebody said I'm amazing. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Drinking some Irish beer and having a little smoky. All right. Hell yeah. How about some Irish whiskey? Some Tullamore Don't. Let me see. Your Gear Factor riff video is one of my favorite bits on the internet. Thank you for that. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the kind words. That was actually a lot of fun to do. They just kind of said go for it, and I just made up a bunch of stuff on the spot. You know, it's kind of funny too. Like, I didn't even realize I was playing the Ride the Lightning riff different for all those years. You know, like somebody was like, you're not even doing the spider chord. It's like, all right, whatever. Everyone's a critic. All right, Tough E Socks just stopping by to say thanks for headbutting me in the chest after you came down the balcony steps during Sick of You at your Easter show in Green Bay. When was this? I don't know if I remember that one. Remember, I've been out of the band for 3 years. Or it'll be 3 years in, I guess, October. Oh, man, I have a history with Tullamore Dew. Yeah, don't we all, man? Holy shit. I could probably do a whole episode on just drinking that and having a real bad time. So, yes. I don't drink anymore. So, but when I did, the Tullamore Dew was, it was on the rider. I'll just put it that way. All right. So Neptos is G12H or G1265 for metal through a 2203. That's tough. I really like them both. I really like them both a lot. So, I mean, hey, you want to know the secret to that, though? What we're doing in the Bastards, like for our live rig, that's it. I play through a full stack with G12H 30s in it, the Heritage reissue ones. I'm recording with some original 74s, and our other guitar player, Mr. Doug Fines, plays through a full stack with G1265s. I I think those two speakers in particular just have a really, really good balance together because one, the 65 is a little bit more rounder, more just kind of like it's got more bass to it. You could say it's a little more scooped. I think that the upper mid range in the G12H is a little more aggressive. It's a lot more in your face. So I just think they fill each other out. So for like a 2-guitar band, I think it's awesome to have one of those. That's actually my favorite combination. So Neptos, you really can't go wrong with either one. And if you have the opportunity to mix them, do that. You'll be stoked. And Buddha Warlord says, man, see, we're going to talk about all cool. Hey, Kelsey Ray. What's up, girl? We're going to talk about all cool Marshall stuff today because I'm already getting questions about the VBA 400 and G12K 100. So thoughts on the Marshall VBA 400. All right, man, they're really cool. As much as I really, really like those heads, I think you're better off with an older SVT. I hate to even say that, but well, here's the thing. Reliability issues, I haven't had any problems with the VBA 400. The SVTs, I think before they started dicking around with all of the safety BS, like the bias sensing circuits, and when they did the classics and they put the standby switches on the front, like before them, SVTs are rock solid amplifiers. There's not a bunch of BS in the Marshall and the VBA 400. It's actually put together pretty well. It's a little difficult to kind of get into because of its compact factor on the inside. But as far as like that sound, you can put pedals in front of the VBA 400 and get pretty much anywhere. It's just got like a weird mid-range to it, but I dig it. And that's not to say you couldn't just plug something into it and get great tones. But that one, I feel like I got to twist knobs on it quite a bit to get it where I want it to be, But I do like it. We play one in the Bastards. The Mesa 400 Plus is another one of my favorite bass amps. So like kind of between those three, that's what I really, really like. The 400 Plus is kind of like the bee's knees, but the problems with all of these is the sheer amount of tubes and how much money it costs to retube these things. So, I mean, I don't like working on the SVTs because they're a pain in the ass to get out of the chassis. If you are cursed enough that you have to mess with a Mesa 400 Plus, that might be the worst. Because the circuit boards can die on those things and become conductive. And when that happens, you're screwed. You can't really rebuild them. So the 400s, the 400 pluses, I haven't seen a board failure on a 400 plus, just a 400. But that being said, those are kind of I'm talking a lot about those two amps because those are, to me, that's the benchmark that I kind of hold a standard to what cool bass tone is. Because I mean, even the Sans amp's modeled after the SVT. That's what it's trying to be unplugged. And they even make a VT Sans amp that sounds really good. So, and again, they're emulating the SVT. So I think everything kind of harkens back to that. But I don't want to get too far away from these other questions because Mr. Tanaga Bhakti, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that correctly, but you're asking me about the G12K 100s. Well, again, on this Bastards record, that's what I've got in the other room. So part of getting the bass tone right, I brought out a bunch of 415s, and actually the two of these right behind me were two that I wanted to audition, and I was kind of stoked. And we had auditioned the VBA 400 for this record too, and didn't end up using it. The old SVT beat it out. But so we were trying the 415s, and we were trying to pair it with the Ampeg and an Ampeg 8x10, and the tones are pretty good. Now, the G12K 100 is a phenomenal guitar speaker as well, but we were using it for bass because I'll let you in on a secret. The G12K 100 is what is in the Lemmy MF280L cabinet. So it's weird They call it the MF280, which you would think, well, 280, that's got to be the Mode 4 cabinet loaded with vintage 30s, right? No, not the Lemmy cab. It's called the 280, but it's got G12K100s in it, which should make it an MF400. Don't ask me why. I think the only reason that they kept the number designation 280 was because it's a bottom cab. It's a bottom cab with skid plates on the top, not it doesn't have the caster cups. So an MF400B would technically have caster cups on the bottom and not a 280B. I don't know, man. It's weird stuff. But that being said, the G12K100s sound awesome. They sounded really good for bass. They beat out the 415s we were using, and not because the 415s were bad, because we already had the low end handled by the 8x10 and the SVT. But those G12K100s, man, they got a lot of punch and they handle distortion really well. And I was really surprised how just percussive they were, you know, with a distorted bass tone. So for guitar, I mean, it's the same boat. And even going back to the PV cabs I was just talking about, the G12K185s, the G12K100 is supposed to be the evolution of the G12K85. And there's some lore that just says all they really did was change the model designation on it. That may or may not be true. I've never held two together to figure that out. You know, weighed them and looked at the cone structure and all that stuff. So it may or may not be true, but all I know is I really like the G12K85. I prefer that over the Vintage 30. I prefer that over a lot of Celestion speakers. And I haven't had the G12K100 in a comparable guitar cabinet to really make that judgment to say if they're the same. Because the Mode 4 cabinets, the Lemmy top cabs, the Mode 4 stuff is oversized. So if you put G12K100s or vintage or whatever in the oversized cab, it might be a little bit more boomy than a traditional 1960. And I've only heard the Mode 4 cabinets with the stock configuration, so I don't know how to really gauge the comparison against that speaker in a standard Marshall cab. I'm rambling right now, so sorry. Norman Cox, would you ever play the Madison live? Norman from the guy who bought the Madison stuff, man. What's up, dude? I haven't seen you in a long time. You know, I've worked on a Madison or two. It's been so long, I can't even remember what they sounded like. I remember it being kind of in the same ballpark as like some of the other high gain stuff that was around at the time. Like, I think those came out shortly after, like the JCM 2000s and stuff. And I don't think they were that far away from that sound profile. But I don't know. I mean, if it had the features, I'd kind of shy away from higher gain stuff. You know, like the 800 is, and maybe a split channel that might be as high gain as I go anymore. But I'm willing to try anything. If it sounds good, I don't care what's written on the front of it. I'll play it. Steve 420 Brule. Pusty, if you have the free time, would you ever do a guitar 102 setup video like 101? Oh, something beyond the basics, but also knowledge to keep things in mind when doing setups. Yeah, you know, I've filmed a couple of things here and there that I haven't had the chance to upload yet, but my approach to all the guitars is kind of the same. So, I mean, it would be fun to kind of do maybe like an in-depth series, but you encounter something new almost with every guitar. You know, like every guitar kind of needs its own little trick to get it to play the way you want it to play. And that's really important too, is just knowing yourself as a player, because if I set them up the way I want, that might not work for you. you might have a stronger grip, or you might bend less, or hit harder or softer or something like that. So there's all kinds of different variables, but at least I do kind of know what direction you want to go in for how you play. Do you want more volume? Do you want to play more aggressively? Are you all kinds of stuff, man. Like strings hitting pickups, pickup magnets pulling things out of tune, nut heights being too high. I guess the problem with a lot of those setups is that the basics for someone with like the basic set of tools, you can go a long way, but to really get into the fine tuning things, like for any of the stuff that has to do with the nuts, you need some kind of, an expensive filing set. You need, lots of different types of sanding tools and tools to shape nuts and things like that. And in complete honesty, the Floyd Rose is as much crap as it gets for being hard to work on, though. There's way less tooling involved for the novice to just grab one of those and get to work. Like if you need to raise or lower a Floyd Rose nut shelf, you can do that with minimal tooling. It doesn't take much. A belt sander or even just a table sander. I wouldn't recommend ever sanding the wood. It's always sand the nut itself when it comes to like a Floyd Rose or whatever. But I would say that's easier to manipulate than carving a nut out of bone or graphite or whatever other flavor of the month material they're hawking online. But that, to me, that's the big thing. Start at the nut and everything else kind of falls in place. The Mighty Woodrow, any thoughts or experiences with eminent speakers like the Swamp Things? I just played through a cabinet loaded with 4 Swamp Things on Saturday. I was filling in on guitar for another band, and the band wanted to use, or one of the bands there was wanting everybody to use their back line. So I said, okay, I'll use your mismatched back line. That's fine. It was like some brown wooden cabinet with Swamp Things, and then another PV cabinet. It's fine. It was punk rock, whatever. But Swamp Things, I'm on stage at a place I haven't played in like 10 years. The sound was pretty good. It didn't sound too different than like a vintage 30, but I thought it kind of had the same brittleness to it, but maybe not the same spiky, like that upper mid 5 to 7K like grind that those vintage 30s have that I can't stand. But so the Swamp Things they were close. They were close. Because that's actually what I put in that other band's rehearsal spot that I've been filling in with. I just brought a split channel 800, 2 1960 BB cabs with the vintage 30s in there. I just thought that was close to what the other guitar player used, and I didn't want to like go completely out of left field just coming in. I always like to kind of like start where, if I'm taking somebody's gig or filling in or whatever, you know what I mean? Like if I'm carrying the torch, kind of just want to start from their position and then work my way to whatever I want to do. So who knows? Maybe next week I'll throw a JVM up there. But I'm writing some tunes with that band called Fit Check out of Richmond, and just kind of helping out for a little bit and seeing how it goes, Oh man. All right. Let's see. What do you think of the new UK made vintage 30s? I haven't heard them. I've got a boatload of vintage 30s, Mr. Porky Low End, but I don't have any of the newer ones. I probably haven't even bought a vintage 30 cab in, I think the last one I would have gotten was like a Silver Jubilee cabinet, and then people are going to say that those aren't vintage 30s, they're Marshall vintage speakers, whatever. So, but I think those are still older than 10, 15 years. Nepto says Mesa released the 800D, which is supposedly an 800 class D400 plus, supposedly great. No power tubes makes me sad. Yep, no power tubes would make me sad too. You know, there's something. It's not just about like harmonic distortion with tubes. It's about sag. You know, there's something that happens when you hit a note. Because if you hook up that amp to a voltage meter, you read the plate voltage or something, it might be 600 volts. You hit a big note and you watch that meter just drop. Like there's a huge voltage drop when the current starts to flow. And you know, that results in like a little bit of a sag. And it's like a nice organic push pull, you know, and we're so used to that sound. When you get like a solid state power amp that might be a little bit too clean or too stable, then that's when it starts to not sound too natural. I don't think solid state amps sound bad by definition, but there's something to the magic of tubes, if you want to call it that. At least that's what I think. You know, but I mean, there are plenty of solid state amps that sound really good, but you do want headroom. You know, you don't want to get close to clipping. I think when like that's the other big thing too. When tube power amps get close to clipping or saturation, the what they do just sounds cool. You know, when a solid state amp is at running out of headroom, it sounds really bad. And I think everybody would agree with that. But either way, the 800D might be interesting. I mean, the 400 amps are so cool, but that's the problem is that, man, if you got to retube them, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Yeah. Okay. Did you sort out the guitar audio issues you had last time? No, I did, but I didn't. So like I was doing it right before I started this stream, and I think next time I'm just gonna have to actually start the stream like an hour early and just hang out with everything going. But I was doing test streams and it worked fine. I had to use a different like a service like OBS or something, and it was doing great. And then when I got off my test stream and was trying to log into this one, YouTube was just going nope. And I don't know what the problem was, but it was just not allowing me to use OBS for the stream that I set up in advance. You know, it's so silly. I wanted to set up this thing in advance so everybody could click on it early and wait for it to come live. Not, you know, not you wouldn't have to search for the link at 10 o'clock. It's still a learning curve, but I had it close. But I'm sorry I couldn't make it work. I mean, my amp is still on over there. I've got the red light on that 800. I was literally doing it 30 minutes before this thing started, and that's why I was actually late. Yeah, thanks, Norman, man. It's good to see you, man. Good to hear from you. I was actually just telling somebody about you and the Madisons the other day. Porky Lowen, will the new record be pressed on vinyl? Yes. The Bastards record will be pressed on 180 gram institutional green vinyl, and that will be coming out June 19th. I'm supposed to have some singles drop next week. I was late as fuck at getting all the information to my press guy. So, but I mean, I'm always going to be late. I got too much stuff going on. But yeah, man, I'm stoked. June 19th, US Bastards, Negligent Discharge will be coming out. And you can buy the record directly from us on our Bandcamp. And it will be live on all streaming platforms on the 19th. And we'll drop a couple singles before then. But the records, we're supposed to get them at the same time. I'm not going to do pre-orders. So if I don't have them on the 19th, I won't say I have them. So I'll just have to say stay tuned, and I'll put out a link or a blast or something like that when I actually get the vinyls in my hand. But yeah, I don't want to dick around with pre-orders, you know. Speaking of which, do you have a specific type of Allen key to adjust truss rods? It's a huge pain in the ass with regular keys. Oh yeah, much rather prefer setting up a Floyd or my Tune-o-matic. Just tend to overthink. tend to overthink and get frustrated when, say, changing the tension on the truss rod. It throws everything else out. With the truss rod, it's not. They're not too bad. You just have to know how to make like a straight edge, right? But every guitar is different. So a lot of like import guitars will probably take like a 4 millimeter. Gibson guitars are going to take a 5/16 like a nut driver. They do make a T-handle nut driver for those that works really well. Epiphone, I don't know. It may be another. It may be like another socket type. So, but that's it. I mean, you have socket types, you have hex keys, and then you have like these god awful like. All right, nothing against Cigar at all, but like I believe these have the old LMI truss rods, and LMI used some weird size that like nobody else uses. And you also have to get your keys from there too, because the actual key in a set is just slightly different. It's something about the way they're machined. Um, that one I've been terrified to even turn, but I have a couple guitars from different people that have the LMI truss rods, and I can't recall the size off the top of my head, but I have them all marked in my shop, like which ones go to which guitars. So and those are just standard long hex keys. So they do make longer T-handle ones. Do I have any here? Nope. I thought I could show you one, but like you can get a set of long T-handle hex keys. But the problem is some of the neck break angles on certain guitars won't let you get those in there. So you kind of just need the short L keys. So every guitar is going to be different, unfortunately. Check out Sketchy Setups by Hayes Guitars, or go whole hog and buy a Dan Earlywine setup book. Dan Earlywine is good, man. Like you can learn a lot from him. And I forgot there was another guy that was working for Elixir. I forgot his name, but he was he had a lot of good informative videos too. I think it was like a 4-part series on setting up guitars. And a lot of times if I'm talking to somebody and they're not really getting it, or if I'm going maybe too much in the weeds, a lot of times I'll just say, hey, watch this video, the Elixir string setup video. Like it goes through everything, goes through doing the nut, setting the action at the bridge, the nut height action, the truss rod, all that stuff. It's informative, and it's good that it goes in that order, because there is an order to the process. And if you can't do that, then if you don't go in order, you just chase your own tail. Music Nomad makes nice truss rod adjustment tools from Neptos. Got one from an 85 Jackson because it's a weird 1/4-inch nut with no clearance. Yep, I've seen those too. Yeah. I do think those 80s Jacksons and the Charvels are pretty cool guitars, but they're weird. I do like the Fender. I like the post Fender buyout Jacksons, like in the earlier days when that first went down. I think they standardized a whole lot of stuff, but yeah, the Jacksons at the beginning were kind of funky. All right. Technigabatki, man, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I want to do an X pattern of retro 30s G12. I'm going to move this over here. I want to do an X pattern of retro 30s G12 K100s in a 75. Do you think it'd be too weird for a combo of frequencies? An X pattern of G. Okay, so you're talking about 3 different speakers in a cab? Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's no rules. So if you do it and it sounds good to you, then that's fine. I mean, it's not going to cause any problems, but let's just say, you had every speaker under the sun connected, you're going to wind up with certain frequencies are going to stack on top of each other. And that's never good when things just kind of mount up. And that's, if you want to think about like mixing a record or something, a lot of the problems that engineers deal with early on is a lot of compounding bass, like bass that just is building and building and building, because you got bass guitar, kick drum, you've got low end coming through overheads, toms, all that stuff. And you have to start making room for other things. Now, you really can't EQ each speaker by itself. So if there's a lot of overlap between like resonant peaks of certain frequencies between the different speakers, then it could maybe get a little out of hand, but probably not. That's probably an exaggeration, but I think it'll be all right. You'll know if it sounds bad. But if it was me, I probably wouldn't do more than just two. And I'd be looking at speakers that complement each other rather well. Like a lot of people want to, like, they do the vintage 30 and the greenback thing. I mean, it probably works because the greenback doesn't have a tight low end like a vintage 30, so maybe that's where they excel. But I mean, I would want a speaker that sounded, one to sound dark and one to sound light. I feel like a vintage 30 and a greenback are two bright speakers in the same box. But that's just me. Rick Smith 6199. Is that a Dark Funeral tattoo? Yeah. Yeah, it is. And then of course, Guar goes on tour with Dark Funeral like after I leave. Like, come on, man. But yeah, I got that when I was really young. And of course, the guy told me, hey, you want to get it like really, really big. That's too small. It's going to turn into a black blob. And I didn't listen. And that's exactly what happened. It turned into a blob. And then there was a band called Witchery at the time who had like this nun posing for him with her tits out. And I thought that would be really cool. So that was my other tattoo above that one. Like, I didn't really want to get the band Witchery tattooed, but I liked the image of the naked nun. And of course, I didn't know who to go to when I got my early tattoos, so they all kind of suck. So I mean, she looks like a cartoon face by now, but I mean, but I've had the tattoo for 25 years, so I guess not bad. Neptos. I know people like to poo-poo modern Marshall cabs. What stuff do you like to fix on yours? Do you put metal handles in, remove the weird stereo mono switching board, replace the MDF back with ply? Question mark. I tell you what. So when I get I'm trying to think if I've ever actually bought one new. I've bought two brand new that I know of. I mean, I've got like over 50 Marshall cabinets, but I think what I have done is when I just buy it, I don't touch it. I just use it as it is, or I might change speakers in it or something. But usually when I was touring a lot, I'd get cabinets on the road all the time. I'd just pick them up pretty cheap at some town that we were in, and I'd be like, "Oh, sick! I got like 2 more cabinets," and we just roll with them. So as far as like the metal handles, yes, but when they break, when the plastic ones break or get brittle and stuff like that, yeah, then I'll put the metal ones back in. Or if I take the handles off to do some other type of work and they kind of, they crack around the corners and stuff, then I'll put the metal ones on there. But if it's not broke, I won't take them off. Remove the weird stereo mono switching board. Again, kind of like I'll let it roll like that for a while, but it usually won't stay that way forever because it's something about that switch and the contacts on there. Like it makes a lot of heat and that switch can burn out, and it's gonna burn out in a really inopportune time, like during a gig. So yeah, I'll eventually take those out too. And I started making my own little back plates for them. because I didn't want to alter the actual cabinet. So it was, I got these, and if you go on Reverb and eBay, I think you can actually get somebody's making like the 3D printed single jack plates. That's the way to go. You know, you don't need to do any woodwork to get another jack plate on there. But yeah, and the MDF back with ply, never done it. I don't, the back being MDF doesn't bum me out. Like it, I think they sound fine, you know, and I haven't really put any modern speakers in late 60s Marshall cabs with the ply backs. So I couldn't tell you if that really makes a difference. You know, if I had to tell you that I thought there was a sound difference between the MDF and the ply backs, that I'd be making stuff up. You know, like I don't really know. I don't know. But yeah, Norman, we should catch up sometime, man. I should drop me a line somewhere. I think you might still have my number. I might still have yours. I'll find out how to say hey to you outside of here. Buddha Warlord says, you mentioned cigars earlier. I'm new to the cigar game. What would you recommend and which is your favorite? Give me 1 second. I'll show you. All right. It's too bad I don't smoke in the house because Christ almighty, I want one of these things right now because I've had an awful day. But anyway, you want to talk about favorites? Oh, let's see. Oh, it actually went into focus. So the Monte Cristo 1935 anniversary, the diamond edition or Edición Diamante, like this is the bee's knees. This is the one that I like the most. They're not cheap, so I really don't smoke them that often. I mean, I think they're excessive what the price is. But I think the first one I had was in Miami, and man, part of what I really like about cigar culture too is actually just hanging out with people that share that interest, you know, and talking, and it's a very laid back atmosphere, you know. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's a bunch of old men, but you know, I'm getting there. So anyway, the cool old Cuban guy was talking us up in the shop, and I was just looking for new sticks to get. I think I was leaving Miami. Yeah, it was like I can't remember if it was the end of the cruise or start. I think it was, yeah. I stayed in Miami a couple days after the last war show I ever did. And this guy was like, he's like, yo, if you want to feel like $1,000,000, you want to feel like a millionaire, a billionaire. He's like, you smoke one of these. And I was like, all right, yeah, fuck it. Man, he wasn't lying. This is the best. It really is. They make another, these are probably here in Virginia, about $28 a stick. That's pretty high. So that's like a special occasion one. But hey, if you're not going to smoke that often, then do it, you know. And as far as other recommendations, they got the Rocky Patel, the Edge series. There's like a Sumatra, and then this blue one. I don't know what the hell you call that one. Just a Toro? No, a Nicaraguan Toro. I don't know, man. I just go by the colors. These are pretty good. They're not harsh. They don't have too much bite to them, and they used to be pretty cheap, but now everything's gone up. But those are a good daily smoke. And then I think one of the coolest ones that's come out in a long time are these My Father Blues. These have been selling like crazy. And if you want to get into cigars and the cigar culture and stuff, it does take a while to really figure out what your palate is, what all this stuff does. And because I mean, the first like 20 you have might not be any different, to you, but once you kind of get in there and start doing a whole lot of it, then you actually can start telling the difference between what's what. And then you kind of start to pick up on like each company has their own little flavor palette or profile or something. So with the My Father stuff, I'd almost say most of their stuff is a little harsh. It's a little I don't want to say bitter, but it's got like bite to it. It's like peppery almost. It's not smooth. Some of them are so smooth it's almost like drinking a glass of coffee or something, or a hot cup of coffee in your mouth. It's amazing. But and then some are just like, oh, they're rough and they're raw dog. So I'd say some of that My Father stuff is a little bit more of the on the heavy, on the bite side of things, like not smooth. But this one is not like that. I think they were going for something completely different. So this actually is kind of more akin to like Aging Room and New Worlds. Um, I think that's the AJ Fernandez stuff that does the New Worlds. Those are really good too, and I would have brought one of those out. But the Green Label New Worlds are good, but they're very fragile. So if you're inexperienced to smoke or that you don't have them in a good humidor, I would not recommend them. But the Green Label New World cigars that are pretty inexpensive, and I think they're really, really good for what they are. So anyway, I digress. We could talk about that all day. Obogie says, "Hey Brent, thanks for being so cool to us fans." Well, look, y'all are cool to me. Just this is fun. Eventually I will be playing guitar because I want to just play riffs. Like call out riffs and I'll play them. But it didn't work this time. But yeah, y'all are really cool to me, so I appreciate it. Also, Super Nintendo Chalmers. Oh, you checked it out, man. That's a good one. Super Nintendo Chalmers was the first song I wrote when I figured out, or when I got Pro Tools for the first time, and I was trying to figure out how to use it. And I knew that, like, well, I'm never gonna get any good at recording unless I just do it. Like you just got to do something, because it's like, well, I gotta wait for like a session or a record. No, man, don't ever wait for anything. If you need to write songs or just, you're only gonna get good at something by doing it. So that was my attempt at learning how to record, was Super Nintendo Chalmers. That was my first ever attempt at recording anything. And then yeah, I remember showing it to some people and they did not think it was funny. They were actually offended by it. I won't get into that. Oh shit. All right. What up, Pimp? What up, Planet B? I know these came in a while ago. I'm going through and I'm trying to grab all the comments and I'm getting sidetracked. Swedish black metal rules. Hell yeah, dude. That was all the Norway stuff. I mean, that's good too. I'm not disparaging Norway, but when I was coming up and I was young, it was Marduk and Dark Funeral. I'm trying to think of who else. Like, those were the big Swedish bands. I mean, I guess like Gorgoroth, they were Norwegian, but Watain, it was all the Swedish stuff is kind of where I gravitated to. And I didn't know, we didn't know any of that stuff when we were just listening to them, but that's just where they ended up. So the Swedish stuff is great. And Marduk, I mean, with Legion singing, get out of here. That's the best one. I mean, that's the Panzer Division Marduk is like, I mean, if Death Crush is Freebird, then Panzer Division Marduk is, I don't know, Back in Black, ACD. I mean, it's like, it's a classic. It's everything. I think that's an essential black metal record, you know. I mean, if you are going to play songs in the genre of black metal and you have a song called Christ Raping Black Metal, I think that's it doesn't get any more metal than that. You know, that's it. And what's the last track? Fist fucking God's Planet. I mean, come on. That's good stuff. That's good stuff here. Nepto says Jackson's from San Dimas shop. They moved on to Ontario sometime in 1986. Have binding nibs like a Gibson. Wow. That and the factory Kaler made it hard to pass up buying my roads. You know, I did not know that about the nibs. That's pretty cool. I know exactly why they stopped. That's a waste of time. Look, I love the nibs, but it doesn't really serve a functional purpose. It might feel a little bit better, but it's, you know, I appreciate them, but when I order custom guitars, I don't typically ask for it. So Nagelfar Vitra is like the most underrated Swedish black metal album ever. You dig that one? You know, I never did. I never got into Nagelfar. I just they just didn't. They just weren't on my radar. You know, so I couldn't even tell you what they sound like. I did not avoid them by any means, but Mississippi Queen. Oh yeah. What Neptos? What riff has the biggest balls and why is it March of the SOD? Which riff has the biggest balls? I mean a lot of the SOD stuff, yeah. I think I don't know. I think the heaviest riffs are. I really like that the intro riff for Rock and Roll Crazy Nights from Loudness, and especially if you watch, there's like a live video of them doing that. Like, I think it might even be the early 2000s or something, where same guitar player is playing that intro riff, and it just sounds so good, and it's so heavy, and it's live too. Like it's amazing. Steve 420 Brule. Do you still keep in touch with the band? What do you think of the return of Gorgor EP? I can't believe how hard they are touring right now. Literally 3 tours in 1 year. Yeah, I still keep in touch with everybody over there. You know, we're all still close. I mean, we don't go to dinner every night, or every week or whatever. But yeah, no, I do see them on a pretty regular basis. I've still got my key to the front door, and I pop in and say hey and hang out and talk shit, every once in a while. But like when they're heavy in the tour cycle, it's like I kind of leave them alone because that's a lot of running around going nuts right before you go out the door. And then but I've been meaning to catch up. I've pretty much seen everybody. I need to catch up with Mr. Jizmac and have a cigar with him because I haven't seen him in a minute. And the return of Gorgor EP, I only heard I have it. I just have not listened to it yet, but I've listened to the one they did the video on, and it's cool. I'm interested to see what they can do for a full length, Never listened to Funeral Mists. Yeah. Oh yeah. Good stuff. Would you Excerebration 8 says, would you recommend the Floyd Rose FRX? Do you like it on your Dewey Rao style SG? No. If I really wanted a Floyd, you know what? I don't know if it would have even worked, but no, I would just recommend doing a Floyd. Like just suck it up, and if you want a Floyd on a guitar, route the guitar. And all of the bullshit that people say about the Les Pauls and the SGs and, oh, your bridge is going to set too high off the body. Like, suck it up, Buttercup. Just stick the motherfucker on there. Like, Neil Sean for Journey did it, and he didn't cry like a little fucking girl every day. Come on, man. I'm sorry. I've just a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to sand the top and reset your neck and do all this other stuff to like make a Les Paul play with a Floyd. I don't think you need to do all that shit. I mean, one of the things I love about the Les Paul is how high the strings sit off the body. So it's like, so if you're gonna reset a neck on a Les Paul, so the Floyd sits lower into the body, that just drives me nuts. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that. And I'm sorry, I'm going through it on another guitar already. So no, so with the Floyd Rose FRX, yeah, it kind of solves a little bit of a problem there with you don't have to route the guitar, but I mean, it's all or nothing. I think the FRX is a good idea. I think the application is pretty poor, to be honest, because some of the parts are not hardened steel. They can bend, like the cast metal parts can bend. One of the most critical pieces in there to return you to zero is made out of plastic. And if you shear the plastic threads off of it, you are fucked. And it's just one of those things where it's so dainty and so sensitive. If you have to, like, if you don't get it right the first time, or you have to like wrench on stuff, it's just not good. Like, I went through so much trouble with that one in particular. And also I did a lot of recordings with it, and then realized that the saddles, the intonation screws for all the saddles loosened up, and every saddle moved forward. So that's something you don't even notice until you're listening to you and another guitar player playing together, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you got to go back and recut all your tracks again. I mean, dude, no. So the FRX, I was kind of being diplomatic at first. Now I think I'm more on the side of throw that fucking thing in the trash. They can work, but also on that Dewey Rouse style SG that was given to me by a friend, and it had like a broken neck on it and stuff. That's an Orville, actually, Japanese Gibson copy, and I wanted to do kind of like a tribute to Dewey when we did that live thing, which is why I put the Floyd on there. I don't know if he had a Floyd, if it was some kind of crazy bridge on his, might have been a Kaler, but I don't know. I have not touched that guitar in a long time, but I actually had to route the top of the body to get that FRX on there because the neck angle wasn't far enough tilted back for the FRX to work. So that's another thing. It's like, should have just gone right for the Floyd, but I'm going to have to fill in where I did the dirty work for the FRX. And then I'll probably strip it and refinish it maybe, but it's on the long list of other things I got to do. But I mean, the guitar is playable now. Yeah. Planet B, wife's dad recently passed, and I just inherited his basement workshop full of amp kits to build and some to repair. Oh man, so he was an amp guy. What was he working on? Old like kit amps or radios, or like these like Mojo kit amps? Was he a guitar player? Was he a shredder? Was he an 80s guy? Was he a Hendrix guy? Come on, man. I want to know. Jonathan Jursic says, I am an amp tech at a music store. I am looking to get to the next level. I've done some harder jobs beyond bad tubes like JCM 2000 bias circuit mods, but I want to get better and gain more info. Well, to get to the next level, keep doing it, for sure. There's always some kind of learning stuff in there too, and you get better at the billing when you get more into it, because it's like sometimes you don't want to charge people for you trying to figure something out. Like, because if there's like if you need to trace a circuit, then yeah, you got to charge for that. But if you can't charge for your inexperience, if that makes sense, and I mean that no disrespect at all, because I was there before too. Like I would take on a job that was beyond my ability at the time, and I'd have to figure it out and learn what I was doing and what I was doing wrong. And so that was like a learning experience for me. And so maybe a repair that now I can do in an hour, at one time might have took me 6 because I was chasing my own tail and trying to figure out what the problem was. And plus, the experience will sometimes you'll get amps that come across your desk that are difficult repairs, but you know exactly what to go for, and you almost don't even have to do the diagnostic work. Always do the diagnostic work, because if you don't, again, you could be sure of something and do a lot of work and then put something back together and it still doesn't work, and you're like, what gives? And you might find some other random thing that creates the same symptom. So anyway, read books, and honestly, just the two fundamentals of amplifier circuits, you got to break them down into like the simplest thing. So I just say it's power supply and it's signal flow. And if you can understand those two things, that'll get you through anything made from the 40s all the way up to probably the mid 80s, where they actually start to get complicated. I mean, there's some complicated stuff in the early 80s, late 70s at solid state, but or verging on complicated. But for the most part, stuff was pretty simple, pretty late in the game, actually. So when you're addressing anything, if you can just boil it down to, is this a signal flow problem, or is this a power supply problem? Or do I have a power supply problem that's causing problems in my signal chain? So compartmentalize things, and that'll take you a long way. Just kind of learn how they function. And at a tube amp specifically, it's actually 3 things. I'm sorry. It's the heater supply, the power supply, and the signal path. So man, good luck. There's not really a school for this anymore. So just read lots of books, and if they sound foreign to you, like you're reading through them and they don't make a lot of sense, keep them and maybe try to focus on parts of that book that, like, try to grasp why it doesn't make sense. Because I've been there. I've had a book where I'm like, this is all Chinese to me. I have no idea what it says. And then over time, you just stay at it and you go back through and you go, oh, I know what he's trying to say here. Or I know what this means now. And now I go back and read some of those books again, just to kind of get refreshed on some of the math and the formulas that you got to memorize. So Nick Basolo 808 ADA MP1 thoughts. Yeah, man, those are cool as shit. The MP1s are cool. The EQs were really weird, so I don't think you can really, I think there's a usable range that's fairly limited, but the ADA MP1s are awesome. I'm trying to recall the guy's name that continued that lineage. It'll come to me in a minute, but there was a guy who started doing these, like, I think he left ADA and went on his own and was doing these mods, and I think he might be the same person behind the 3-tube mod or something. But I think the ADA MP1 has enough gain as it is. I don't think you need anything more. It would be interesting to see somebody come up with just the straight up ADA MP1, like a preamp, no MIDI controls on it. The problem with the ADA MP1 is, it's a very primitive chipset. It requires a battery to hold the memory in place, or you lose all your settings. So that's a drawback. They can get noisy. There's some fixes like from doing like transformers and stuff like that. All in all, if you break the circuit down, the circuit itself is not complicated, but to make it work in that MIDI configuration and to have all the channel switching and the different, there's like a solid state clean, there's a tube clean, you know, there's all these different game modes. That's what makes it a complicated amp is the switching. But the let me see. Yeah, but the core tone is great. And actually, I took an 88 MP1 on a Guar tour once when we went to Europe. I bought one from a friend of mine a long time ago, and I never really played it, and I just wanted to take it. We were playing Wacken or Vakken that year, and we jammed together when we were teenagers. So I thought it'd be cool to like take his preamp and send him a picture, like, "Hey, dude, like we were in these little storage units jamming, and I brought your amp all the way to Germany to jam it out. You know, kind of feel like I'm bringing my buds with me, you know." So Neil Adams, yeah, what's up, dog? Let's see. You going to MDF at all? I know I'll be there, and Planet B Photography will be too. You know, I don't know. Probably not. I don't know if it's sold out. I did see a lot of cool bands on the bill, but I don't think I will go. Maybe. Buddha Warlord says, if the Bastards could tour with 3 other bands, past or present, who would you pick to be on the bill? Oh, man. 3 other bands, past or present, like past the bands that aren't around anymore. You know, I want to say the Ramones, but I feel like the Ramones crowd would not like it. But how about Zeke and Turbo Negro? That would be a killer tour, you know. Or Bastard Zeke, Motorhead. I'm trying to think of bands that are still alive. But you know, I love Zeke so much, but that's a hard band to open for, and not because the crowd's good. You know, there's some bands you open for and the crowds are like merciless. They don't like any of the opening bands. They just want to see their band, and that's it. It's not like that with Zeke, but Zeke, they're so fast and the leads are so intense, and it's just like there's no bullshit in between songs. That's a hard act. I mean, I guess it's easier to play before him than after him, but it's just like it just kind of sets the bar for what you just did. At least that's the way I feel. Like you get smoked. So and I think once you hear the new Bastards record, there won't be a lot of bands that can smoke that, but Zeke absolutely can. You know, Blind Marky is a phenomenal guitar player, and just the drummer Donnie Paycheck, the way he plays drums, it's blistering. That's why they're my favorite rock and roll band, is because there's no other rock and roll band that's that fast, that hard, and that blazing with the speed licks, man. Jerry Branson, you are the greatest guitar player ever, man. For real. Nah, dog. Come on. I'm all right. But thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Vic 304 says, any love for 80s solid state Marshalls? Some of them sound killer. Yeah. To my right, I have 2 lead 12s. One I had restored and then I broke it like immediately after. I was playing through it here in the shop, or I'm sorry, here in the Marshall room, and I stood up and I stepped on the cord and I broke the jack right out of the PCB socket. So, like, after I'd already restored it, I'd even added a jack so I could hook it up to a 4x12 and stuff. And the lead 12s are cool. The MOSFETs are cool. I tell you, the first time I had to play a MOSFET, I was very unhappy. It didn't give me what I wanted. And then I just thought it sounded stiff and fucking brittle and gross. But now, I think my playing has matured a little bit. So I'm actually able to use use your ears and not your eyes when you turn knobs, and you can get a great feel out of those things. So yeah, the MOSFETs, the lead 12s, the lead 20s. The lead 12s are kind of dark. Like if you put them through you can put them through a power amp, or even a 4x12, but they don't really get bright enough. The lead 20s do a little bit better, and I think there's even there's supposed to be something above that. Like there's like a master model 50 or 100 or something. There's another large solid state amp that may predate the MOSFET MOSFET 100, but they're all kind of a lineage of each other. But Marshall did cool stuff with solid state, I will admit. I think they were really cool. They're different, but the sonic profile I thought they got really well done. Some amps will have a solid state amp, and then they'll have a tube amp of this, and they'll call them close to the same thing, and they sound nothing alike. I think Marshall was doing a really good job of staying within their footprint, their sonic footprint, for all those years. And it really wasn't until 1991 or 1990 when the 900s came out that they were like, oh yeah, you liked the way we sounded? Fuck you, not anymore. Because that's it. When the 90s hit, that was Marshall took that EQ curve where they were, and they just went in a different direction and never looked back. And the only things that harken back to that sound are the reissues, and it's always been that way. Like the 2000, the JVM, none of that stuff comes anywhere close to the 800s or the JMPs or even the solid state stuff. I think all that stuff before the 90s fit like in a box. It all sounded generally the same. You could almost get them to do the same things, but that just went out the window. Yeah, that just went out the window at a certain point. So, and my volume's not too low, is it? I might be able to turn it up. Probably not. All right. Let's see. Just reading some comments here. Oh, okay. So Planet B, he was old blues music, played guitar all his life, tinkering around on his amps, old Fenders, and got into building those Mojo Tweed kits. Man, that's actually really cool, especially if you got a chance to just have a bunch of that stuff in front of you. I mean, it took me a long time to understand what the Fender stuff was. I mean, you kind of know what it is. It's just like great cleans and whatever. But, a cranked bassman or a dual showman, I mean, those sound really awesome for rock and roll. And I think, honestly, the reason Marshall is the sound of rock and roll around the world is because, was maybe, whatever, still is. But Fender went the other way. Like they started doing ultra linear power sections. They went cleaner when Marshall went dirtier, and I don't think that was a bad thing necessarily, but Celestion and Marshall kind of cornered the market on hard rock and aggressive music. And because the competition didn't stand up to that. But I mean, Fender could have very well have made some harder edged amps, and I think they would have been the staple because they were cheap, or cheaper compared to the Marshall stuff at the time. And the PV thing, you know, that's a whole other topic of discussion. But but PV came later anyway. But yeah, Fenders are cool, man. But and another reason you don't see a lot of guys play them is because those older ones, they didn't have variable tapped output transformers. So you could only use like one or two cabs. So like the big stacks, that was the Marshall thing, because you could set a Marshall stack or a head to 4 ohms and you could run 4 16 ohm cabinets off of that, you know, daisy chaining them or something. So I mean, you couldn't really do that with the Fender. I mean, I guess you could, but you know, you couldn't use one 16 ohm cab with the Fender. They never had 16 ohm taps. So you lost a lot of volume and stuff like that. Yeah, from Dewey's. Let's see. Fender Jonathan says, had a Fender Blues Junior come across my desk within a month. All the same issues: caps leaking, hot bias, burnt diodes, resistors. Yeah. Yeah, some of the, I think it was the 90s Blues Juniors had a lot of problems with certain capacitors. I think they were like Illinois capacitors or something. And still to this day, people are superstitious over that brand because of that. Despite them living 50 years in a PV, people go, "Oh, Fender had one bad batch. Now we can't use IC caps anymore." And yeah, I think exurberation, I don't know, but man, whatever. I think Dewey's SG did have a Kaler. And if it was, I think 83, Gibson was putting Kalers in their guitars in 83, and I think they continued to do it for a while. So that would make sense. Anything you're working on, you have to try to fully understand how it works. Not a Mesa Boogie. If you try to understand what they did, your brain will leak out of your ear. They are the worst. You cannot understand why they did the things that they did. You just have to accept them, and hopefully you can get it working and move on. Let's see. Jeffrey Anderson says, I love my Marshalls, but I have an old Bugera 1990. That was probably my favorite. Lost volume, started feeding back and squelching, retube and placed, died again. Ever work on one? Yes. And if it's 1990, when the volume goes, does the channel switch flicker? Because those had a problem that was very widespread. It was there was an IC or something that sent power to a relay, and the IC, or it might have been like a voltage regulator or something, I can't remember, but whatever it was, it didn't have the right heat sink on it, and it got super hot, so it would overheat and it would stop working. And sometimes they wouldn't even go bad. They would just overheat and then shit out like within a few minutes of being on. Once all the heat paste and everything comes out of it, it's no good. But really, you just take that component off and you mount it onto a heat sink onto the chassis with thermal paste, solves the problem. If it's that, I don't know. It could be any number of things. But yeah, I have worked on a Bugera 1990, and they're not that complicated aside from, I think the reverb is digital compared to the amp that it's supposed to emulate had a reverb tank. But yeah, those aren't bad. Those aren't bad at all. Ian Frost 83, what up, dude? What's up, man? Not low. It's good. Neptos. Weren't the Marshall Majors ultra linear? At least the ones after 3 knob. Yes. Yes, Marshall majors were ultralinear. So the phase inverter was different. I don't want to talk out of my ass and say the wrong thing, but you could still get them to break up, so they weren't like clean, clean, clean all the way through. You could still crank them and get some juice out of them. I think there's a lot of well, a lot of the lore about how bad the majors were and how they would blow up all the time. Most of those forums are gone. So I think a lot of those superstitions are going away because I don't really believe half of them, that they're just like, if you would have been on the internet 15, 20 years ago and done research on the Marshall majors, everyone would be like, they're going to blow up if you put a distortion pedal in front of them. It's like, guys, and they would say it's because it's ultra linear. Ampeg and Fender have been doing ultra linear amps for 50, 60 years. I think it's okay. Like they're not going to blow up. There's some weird issues with screen groove resistors being too small and some older majors or whatever, but I think they're pretty cool. And 200 watts is a lot of watts, but it's not that much louder than you would think. It does have more headroom. Eddie Clark says, my guy, I've seen you on the Marshall forums. You were one of the guys that helped me figure out my issue with my 900 in Japan. I think I remember talking about that. I think it threw everybody for a loop that you were in Japan. It's just like, wait, what? I'm trying to remember what that issue was. But yeah, man, well, that's cool. I haven't been on the forum in a bit, but I love the Marshall forum and a lot of the guys over there. So it's great, man. So I need to know, how many Marshall 4x12s and heads do you have? It's a beautiful thing. It's a lot. So I have a spreadsheet. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of like, it's over 50 cabinets, and the heads is like over 75 or something. But it sounds crazy, but I don't have any other hobbies. So I like construction work. I really do. And I like playing music, and I like collecting and working on equipment. So it's almost like, if you like music, you buy records. It's like, well, I like amplifiers and I like creating them and working on them and fixing them. So I'm passionate about them. So I buy them. And I bought a lot of them on tour. When we were on tour, I'd go to every music shop, and we didn't have a lot of money. So what I would be doing, I'm always looking for like the deals. I was always looking for stuff that was broken, stuff that was just worn out, because I would always say like, well, that's the amp I'm going to take on tour because it's beat up. And then a couple states away, you find another one. So a lot of the stuff was purchased a long time ago and for a pretty good discount, so traveling helps, because if you're just, if you're in your own little market, you're only going to have access to what's around you. I mean, you can buy whatever you want off Reverb, but you're paying that big full price. So, but traveling in the days of like the trading posts and the marketplace and the Craigslist and going through all these little local shops and local papers, you could find all kinds of cool stuff. And that's how the collection grew so fast and so big. For big Fender rigs, the Nuge ran multiple dual Showman heads through 2x15 cabs. Not Marshall crunchy, but had to be just as loud. Yeah, man. I mean, those sounded great. Dual Showmans sound awesome when they're cranked. If you the screen groove resistors get super hot, so you're better off replacing those with something a little bit more robust if you're going to crank them like that. But yeah. Ian Frost says, do you still do amp repair? Yes, I do. I don't trust anyone with my Crankenstein. Well, I'm gonna be busy for a minute because I've got because even though the Bastards record, the full length is coming out next month, June 19th. What we're in the studio working on now, we want to come out at the end, closer to the end of the year. So, so, and I've got a couple of Ampegs and a couple of Marshalls and some Laneys and some Edens. So shit, now I think about it, I've got about a dozen or so amplifiers in front of me before I can get to anything new. So yeah, hit me up, email me, brent@pergasound.com, and we can talk about it. I'd be more than happy to take a look at it, but I've just got to be realistic with my time. My shop, we're not open to the public. People do mail me things, but when I get really busy, sometimes I'm just like, well, you can send it to me now, but I may have it for a long time. If you want to wait, then I can put you in a line and tell you, like, okay, if you send it to me now, I could probably have it within a few weeks or something. But it's always up and down. Because I don't do that full time, by the way. I have a contracting company, and that's my main gig. 99 cents for 50 milliliters do used to get me hammered. Oh, yeah, the Tullamore do. God damn. Or the Old Crow, man. Jeffrey Anderson. Channel light never flickered, but bias went nuts and tube glowed erratically. Had some odd readings in the output transformer, so replaced it, but hard to diagnose. All traces are closed most places. Well, if the bias went nuts, that's kind of easy to stabilize in a way because, well, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this one, but like you can take a negative voltage source from another part of the amp or an external source. Like you can make another source to actually bias the tubes. So I mean, if you wanted to rule out something like a bias circuit, that would be a way to do it, but I think you could just as easily just trace the bias circuit in that amplifier before running like any type of external source. But there's more than one way to do it. But I mean, replacing the transformer, that's the thing with a lot of these repairs is you got to be careful because you don't want to just like throw the parts cannon at it and just like replace stuff for no reason. You really want to know why you're doing it. And when a transformer comes out, and look, I see a lot of techs do this, and I say techs with air quotes. They change transformers out for no reason, and I don't really understand why they think that that's so. Here's the thing: I always see people on the forum say, "Oh, my transformer's blown up," and I go, "Well, did you test it?" They said, "Yeah, I know that's what it is. We're gonna replace it," and I go, "You know it. You know that's what it is. So did you test it?" No, but I know that's what it is. So look, I put a new transformer in there already, and it sounds much better. So I know the transformer was bad that I took out, and I go, "Okay, well, can I have it then?" No, no, I think I'll keep it. It's it's a bunch of bullshit, man. It really is. Transformers are not hard to test, but people are convinced that they're bad, and they just will go on a hunch. I mean, it's the tools that you need to diagnose amplifiers or to work on them, like your current limiting device. You're gonna want to have some sort of variac or voltage generator, whatever. That's all you need to test a transformer. Put a small amount of voltage in the primary and see what comes out on the secondary. I mean, you test an output transformer the same way, and you can actually use some math to determine, voltage in, voltage out. You can determine the winding ratio. You can figure out where the start of the winding is, where's the end. you can determine a lot without knowing anything. You don't need the spec sheet. The spec sheet helps, but I mean, but you can figure out you can which side is the primary, which side is the secondary. You can figure out what taps are which by doing the math. I mean, it's anyway, you can test all the stuff. I don't want to get too deep into it, but yeah, Troop and old timers tell stories about running another amp into the input of an amp. Yeah, I mean, you can blow some shit up that way. Mercy Blast TV. Speaking of Ampeg, got me an Ampeg SS140C. Love this amp. That's like the metal one, right? The 90s, early 90s death metal guys had them. I think those were pretty cool. I think, what was it, like the Cannibal Corpse dudes might have had one. Dying Fetus, I think. Excerebration. What's your favorite speaker of all time? I kind of hate them all. My favorite speaker is I mean, right now it's the G12H30, the Heritage one. I'm really excited about the blackbacks that are coming out. I've got a lot of Scumbag speakers that I really, really like. And I guess when it comes to the speakers, it's like there's not just one that does it for me. I usually have to, I want two. Like, I want two to complement each other, and that's kind of how I like to get my sound. But of course, live, I'm using a full stack, but it's just all the same. But, when I'm recording, I like to use multiple mics and multiple speakers, and that's kind of how I get my sound. But it's always changing, so I don't know that I could say that they'd be my favorite of all time. I kind of ebbs and flows, man. It changes. So Jeffrey Upton says, any advice to help an Amigo buy us a 4100? Caught you on Tone Talk. You are the Marshall man. Thank you. Thank you very much. Tone Talk was a lot of fun. And I wanted to be on that show bad too, because when we were kids, that's what we called, or not, when I say kids, we were like 20. And when we would get shit hammered and talk about guitar tones, we'd talk about like Vader, like, listen to the fuck. Did you hear the live tone on this thing? And we'd be talking about other bands and their shitty tone. And we had our own little fake talk show and we called it Tone Talk, and Pitch Politics was the two titles. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, trying to buy us a 4100. Yeah, well, what's the issue with it? Is it not getting hot enough? Is it too cold? Is it just not working at all? Because I can't remember if it's the 4100. I think that one of them has a funky bias circuit. It's got a capacitor coupled bias circuit, and the capacitor is under spec. I think that's the MK3. I don't know if they did that in the 4100 too, but maybe. And if they did, that could be the issue. The under-spec capacitor that's in series with the bias supply. Eddie Clark. I learned more about the issue later. Turns out all 800 and 800 sent to Japan were sent with 120-volt transformers and had death caps installed. It was normal. Oh, did you have the voltage that was too high? Yeah, okay. So, or no, because Japan is 100 volts. It wouldn't be high enough. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of weird stuff happened in that period of time. It was just like, just throw them in there. It's I sympathize with you. You're looking for something that's wrong, and it's like, that's just the way they were. Yeah. All 800 sent to Japan were sent with 120-volt transformers. Because I see deals in Japan every once in a while, and I'm scared to get them because I don't want to like get the deal on the amp, get it back to the States, and then have to put a new transformer in it because it's, get it to run at 120. But yeah, with the death cap, that's right, because they didn't do the 3-prong plug until recently, so you could be flipping the polarity on the thing. Yeah, that's wild, man. Japan's electrical grid always threw me for a loop because of how advanced everything else in that country is. I love Japan. It's an amazing place. I really want to go back, and I probably can't live without my phone today, but man, I would love to just go to Japan for like a couple months, throw my phone in the river, and just experience life out there, man. That'd be awesome. Well, that's cool, Eddie, man. I'm glad you got a new 80s 1968 cab, man. It's going to sound good. Are you still in Japan? Nepto says, I just snagged an old Mesa oversized 4x12 straight with a slant baffle for $600 on Guitar Center used of all places. So I get a 45-day return policy. Guitar Center used is not bad. I've actually got a lot of cool stuff on there, and I've had some stuff arrive to my house with questionable packaging, but knock on wood, it has survived. The last few purchases I made them like I know when the stores are open, right? So, and I have a sales guy that calls, and I have a friend that works in one of the local ones that we're really tight. And when I buy something that's like super rare or it's super old, I'll call the store or I'll have them call the store and be like, hey man, please put some bubble wrap in this thing. Like, don't just put this 1974, 1968, don't just put it in a box. Please wrap it, and just stuff like that. And they'll listen to you, but sometimes you just have to remind them, like, please take care of this. This is very important to me. Because, man, I'll tell you what, the grossest thing about the Guitar Center use, if something is damaged in shipping and it goes back to the store, it gets destroyed. Like, because they can't resell it. And it's like, I've seen them destroy brand new stuff, and I've seen them destroy irreplaceable vintage equipment. So I don't know why they don't instruct their guys to pack things a little bit better, but knock on wood, everything I bought from them has been stellar so far. Mercy Blast said, I think Jimmy Bauer and Brian Patton used the Ampeg SS140C. Yeah, I toured with Jimmy for a little bit. I can't remember what he was using. I thought it was like a Randall or something. But maybe it was that. Yeah, around the late 80s and early 90s, it came out after St. Louis Music acquired Ampeg. Okay. So was that the Lee Jackson thing? Jeffrey Anderson says, thanks, dude, for the info and chatting with us. You helped me years ago with signal routing and recommended a Tonebone ABY, and it helped me greatly. Always appreciated that a lot. Been a huge fan of yours. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. The Tonebone ABYs. I got one of those behind me too. Yeah, they're great. They're great. Was that like maybe at a Marshall Forum or something too? If it's an 800, a 900, or a JMP one, it's safe to bring over. All right. Hell yeah. That's good to know. I do kind of like those three switches on the front thing. It looks kind of funky, but I like it. I do. And there's actually one that I have on my bench now that's got 3 switches, but some ding dong added a fan switch to band-aid another problem in a JMP. But to fix it. Well, I'm like, well, you don't need a fan in this amp, and it's a master volume amp anyway. But what I'm going to pitch to the customer is, let me take a Dremel and make that hole, just because it's already a rectangular hole. I'm like, let me make it a little bit bigger, and we can mimic one of these Japanese amps with a polarity switch with the big black rocker on it. I was like, I think that'll be cool looking. Stephen Brule says, you can find hella sick shit on Guitar Center because it gets mislabeled a lot. Sometimes a lot of Wiser Craft Boss pedals will just be labeled as a regular one. Oh, nice. Scored a mint metal zone Waza for $60. Cobra's third cousin 308 says, we need another Antietam 1862 album. Also a huge fan. Thank you. Thank you. You know, with the Antietam stuff, it was really my buddy Chris Carr, the drummer. When he moved out of town, it was just kind of like we lost the drive to do it. I mean, everybody in the band still wanted to do it, but Richmond doesn't have a lot of like blasters, you know. And there's a couple, but you know, there's still a lot of talent here, and some of the guys that could actually play it were like, well, I don't want to tour and stuff like that, and it was just kind of a bummer. It was a really hard time to get that band, to get it going and keep it going. So, you know, just life, we just kind of let it fizzle out. But you know, I guess I'm old school in the fact that I like to just have everybody that's in the band in the same area. Like, I like to rehearse together and write songs that way. I don't really like to email stuff back and forth. I mean, I have done that too, but it was fun writing in that band together as a group and being in the room together and coming up with all that stuff. And, you know, I don't regret anything about not keeping that band going, but at the same time, it would have been really cool to have continued to do it and to become better songwriters, because at the time we were just smashing riffs together, and, you know, we weren't really, and lyrics, I was just trying to sound evil. You know, I was just trying to get stuff out. I wasn't really diving into my head, and you know, I don't know how to explain it. Instagram post, huh? All right, cool. Jeffrey Upton had a tube die on my 900 100-watt reverb. Not sure if I can just buy a quad and drop them in without a bias. Old amp never had an issue. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, if just one died, yeah, I mean, you can buy a quad and throw them in there, but without a bias, it's kind of hard to say, because you don't, without knowing, they probably won't be too hot, but you do want to be careful, because you don't want them to red plate or something. I mean, if you're not playing at super high volumes, they'll probably be okay. I think that's something to consider too. If you can bias hotter if you're not cranking the amp, because think of like the bias as the negative voltage that's sent to a tube. You can almost think of it as like a hot air balloon and like a weight or something like that. Like, the negative voltage is to keep it from going too high. So this analogy sucks. Look, I'm sorry, I can't explain it. If you're not cranking the amp super loud, the bias is not as critical as we make it out to be. Bias is important, but it's not everything. So, yeah, if it's a little on the high side and you're just playing at bedroom volumes, yeah, it's fine. There's nothing to worry about there. But, you know, I tell you what, go to Eurotubes and buy one of those. It's just like a cheap bias probe, and I think they even sell the multimeter at eurotubes.com too. It's like a cheap $5, $10, $20 multimeter. I think you can buy them at Harbor Freight. Like the cheapest multimeter you can buy will do the job. Like the accuracy is there, the accuracy is fine. And if all you're going to do is just bias the tubes and you're on a budget, then sure, do that. Like buy a single bias probe, the cheap meter, and then you can do it. You can do it yourself, and it's not that hard. And look, I'll tell you a trick. You say it's 100 watt. It's a 4100. All right, 33 milliamps. There you go. Like everybody always wants to say, oh, you got to do the math and you got to figure out this and that. It's like, sure, yes, you have to do math, but do you really? Look, between 100-watt Marshalls are going to be between 450 and 475 volts. Maybe they'll be even less. Maybe it'll be 440, whatever. But like the math doesn't change that much with that small fluctuation of voltage for your plate voltage or whatever. So 100-watt Marshall, if you stick to between 33 milliamps and 36 milliamps per tube, totally fine. Like those are never going to be too hot. They're never going to be too cold. So just go for that. So if you don't want to poke around in the actual amplifier with meters and take all those readings and stuff, and you're not comfortable with that, just hit it at 33. Just get your little insulated mini screwdriver to adjust the bias pot, and you'll be fine. So there you go. And Eurotubes has all the instructions on how to use that stuff too. So you don't have to be a tech to bias. You know, it's pretty simple. Saw y'all at barbecue. Yeah, the Antietam. That I think that was our might have been our last show. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But like we had gotten back together to do that because I think our bass player had left and we got my buddy Neil Adams to fill in on bass, and it was pretty amazing. He just jumped in and picked it up and saved our ass so we could do it. And because the guy that left, Zach O'Carroll, he was a phenomenal bass player. And that dude, he doesn't even play or tour or anything. He just gave it up. But I mean, god damn, that kid had a lot of talent, man. A lot. He was so good. Stephen Brule, on your Thunderverb 200, do you remember if it was boosted? No. When I plug straight into mine, it does not have as much gain as your video. I've had it revised to rebias. No, the Thunderverb thing, no, I didn't play any pedals in that one. I'm trying to remember what else I would have done. I mean, I think it's got a post phase inverter master volume. I can't remember which guitar I would have had in my hand, but I've got fairly hot pickups in all of my guitars, so maybe that's it. So check that out. I don't know what the pickups are in your guitar, but they do have a lot of gain. And you're probably not playing as loud as Brent, yeah. Also, it's recordings are a little deceiving too. Whenever you mic up a speaker cabinet, it does sound a little bit heavier than it does in the room typically, like a little bit more gainy. So if it's just a little bit, or that might be it. So, but the Thunderverb is a cool amp. Also check the tubes, like oh shit, if you've got the Nazguls going into it and the gain dime, yeah, well, it should have plenty of gain with those pickups. Nazguls. What do I have? Do I still have those over here? Yeah. All right. I've got a Nazgul bridge and a sentient neck. I guess these, no. Oh, these were never in a guitar. Maybe the sentient was. Yeah, I got these when Seymour Duncan. These are old, man. I was with Seymour Duncan at the beginning of my career in Guar, and Seymour and the team, they were awesome to me, to be honest. They were really, really cool. And they sent me the Nazgul, the Pegasus, and the Black Winters when they were like, I got them all before they came out. And I was just like, oh, I was so excited, to get something like that. But like I didn't like them. I did not like the Black Winters at all. I thought they would be really cool, but I thought they sounded like shit. The Nazgul, I guess I never tried it. I'm kind of interested to see what it is now. Do I even have a multimeter where I could take a DC resistance reading? Yeah, and I think I can't remember if I even put the Pegasus in anything or not. But I sold the Black Winters. I'm pretty sure I sold the Pegasus, and I just never got around to selling the Nazgul. But like, there's just other Seymour stuff that I like, that I was using at the time, like the 59s, the JBs, the Duncan distortions. I can't remember what else I would have had. Oh, and back when I had the signature War Ghoul guitars, they were the AHB blackout metal pickups, because Corey Smoot did the EMG thing, and I wanted an active pickup at the time, but I didn't want to use the exact same thing, so the blackout metal pickups were crazy. Like, they were super, super hot. Those pickups, the output was so much that it would clip my wah pedal, like, and it would my rack wah unit, and it would go like, it'd make this fucked up sound. And I remember calling Dunlop and saying, hey, is there a way I can modify this thing to have more headroom? And the guy just goes, just turn your guitar down. It's like, what? Can't do that. So thoughts on active pickups. Well, I mean, the active thing, I guess I'm just used to the passive sound, the passive, the way that it responds to you and everything, and the things you need to do to your amp to like get the passives to give you the tone you're after. So I'm used to that. Like, that's what I like. So I remember playing the actives, the AHB blackout metal 2s with the gain boost thing, kind of, because there's a little thing in the pickup where you can turn this shit around and you can get like a big gain boost out of it. Now, that in the front of an 800 is crazy. Like, it almost sounds like you have a tube screamer, because you're boosting the front end of the amp with the preamp and the pickup. And that's just it. The pickups, active pickups, it's just a regular pickup with an active preamp in it. And the preamps can be pretty creative, but then again, there's something that happens with the impedance of the signal that affects how the tube responds, or how the guitar pickup and the input gain stage of the tube interact is one thing. Now, this goes away this also changes when you have like active buffers and pedals, you know, like the Boss TU2 is famous for having an active buffer in it. So it changes the dynamic of how the guitar responds with the amp, sure. But actives take that a step further. I don't know, man. If it gets you the sound you want, it doesn't really matter what I think. But I don't like batteries in guitars. It's just one more thing that gets in the way. And I kind of prefer, I know what to do with a passive pickup as far as how do I get it to clean up? How do I don't know, it's a part of me, man. Like I can flick to the neck pickup, turn my volume down just a hair to get that clean sound, and it responds to your picking because my gain's high, but not that high to where it won't ease up. And then I could click right under the bridge pickup, roll the volume back up, and do leads and stuff like that. You know, like I feel like maybe you can't do that as well or the same with an active pickup. But I don't know. I'm just rambling, dude. I'll just say that I don't feel like anything's missing in a passive pickup. So that's why I don't feel the need to go to active. Yeah, I agree with you, Neptos. You know, strongly prefer passives, but EMGs do a thing that is very difficult to emulate with passes and pedals. If you dig that thing, just run EMGs. You know, uh, I'd say, I mean, shit, one of my favorite guitar players ever, Richie Faulkner from Priest. You know, he's using these EMG 57, 56, whatever they are. It's not an 81. 57, 66. I can't remember what the numbers are, but I don't think they sound too dissimilar. Like there's still a lot of compression, but you know, he's a high gain player too. But I mean, listening to him rip leads live, you know, sounds incredible. So, I mean, it's all about what you want to do with them. But you know, I wouldn't really try to emulate that tone myself, but I love listening to what he does with them. So, I mean, so yeah, actives are definitely, they can be cool. I do not turn my nose up at them. Uh, Brett's 348 is asking, other than metal, what are some genres you're into for music or some other bands? Your taste expanding as you get older? Yeah, I mean, really, yeah. As far as like taste expanding, what changed for me was like, I guess, becoming, learning a little bit more about songwriting and melody and things like hooks in music, trying to come up with things that made songs stand out and become memorable. So I don't, it's kind of cheesy to be like, oh, you got to write a song, you got to write a hit. Well, it's not about writing a hit. It's about writing a song that when you hear it for the first time and you walk away from the show, you can still remember a good portion of that tune. And when you hear it again, you're like, I remember them playing that song live. So if you have a band that's like crazy overtly technical and just shits all over the place and there's nothing to latch on to and it's frantic, you'll leave that show just remembering it was a whirlwind of noise. And you know, you listen to the record and you probably won't be able to pick out what songs were where, you know, unless they had memorable parts or something like that. But I don't know, that changed the way I looked at music, and it took me away from metal a lot just because I think modern metal in the late 2000s, the mid to late 2000s, was just bands trying to outdo each other on speed and technical proficiency and stuff like that. But in the 90s, you had Obituary, Cannibal Corpse, Monstrosity, um, Immolation, Deicide, and all these Morbid Angel, and all of those bands sounded vastly different from each other, like very, very fucking different. And that's the key right there. All these death metal bands that came out in the 2000s and today, a lot of them just all sound the same. You know, they want the same production value, they want the same drum triggers, they want the same quantized fucking beats, you know, and now it's even worse. It's everybody's using the same plugins. Like, I'm not trying to knock all the modern music, but that's why I got away from metal. And you know, I like Thin Lizzy. You know, there's a band called Alten Goon, which is like, I think they're a Dutch band, and they play like Turkish pop music. So there's a big Dutch Danish connection there. I'm not Dutch Dane, I'm sorry. Turkish Dutch connection. Right. Because we're talking about the Netherlands. And if you think about even a band like The Devil's Blood, which is amazing too, that's the singer and the guitar player were also Turkish for that. So the Netherlands and Turkey must have some kind of big musical connection, because there's a lot of stuff that comes out of the joining of those two cultures that is really cool. Now, Alten Goon is like, it's all Turkish language too, but it's interesting, man. It's worth checking out. And there's what is it? Madhu Mokhtar. Come on, man. You guys know about Madhu Mokhtar? It's like an African guy playing a Fender Strat, and it sounds weird as hell. That's definitely off the beaten path for music. It's something that's a lot different, you know. But as far as like, it's foreign, but it's nothing like Alten Goon. You know, Madhu Mokhtar is like African or something. And the song structures they're long, and sometimes they're a little droning. But I think what makes it really interesting is that the sounds he's making on the guitar, it's not something that you would intuitively pick up and play, like you wouldn't play that like that for Western music. So that's interesting. And it's like a palate cleanser, man. Some of that stuff, because like if you're on tour and you're hearing the same like 3 fucking bands like every day, and especially if they're all metal bands and you're just getting that beat into your skull, it can grind you down and just kind of make you not want to hear distorted guitar for a little bit, you know. And then when you hear something fresh like that, it's cool. I don't think I ever thought about stuff like that when I was younger, but when you work with music all the time, sometimes you need a break. You know, like when we're on tour, I listen to all kinds of different stuff in between gigs, you know. But then when I go home, you know, I'm probably listening to like crazy fucking fast speed punk and death metal while I'm making pancakes in the morning for the kids, you know, because it's just like I'm not getting overwhelmed with it when I'm here. So yeah, listen to a lot of crazy shit. Troopin says the death metal production and shitty equipment people were stuck with gave it all a unique sound. Yes, it did. Because those guys, a lot of those early records, man, those dudes were like borrowing amps, and they could only afford like 1 or 2 or whatever. It's like they had to make it work. And I thought that was I mean, like, dude, Trevor Perez from Obituary, that tone is like I always thought it was a guitar with a tone knob rolled down, but no, it's a rat pedal with the filter knob rolled down. You know, like that. Nobody else did that, you know, not for death metal, you know. And so they had their own sound, you know. And I think the closest that anybody even sounded to that was like Anti-Scene, and that's a totally different genre of music than Obituary. But they had that like same type of guitar sound a little bit. But yeah, my mom said all those bands sounded the same in the 90s. See, we're just old, you know. I just don't get it. She'd be appalled by modern metal. For the win, Thin Lizzy, hell yeah. You know, I just haven't gotten tired of Thin Lizzy yet. Oh, and what's the other one? Rose Tattoo. Rose Tattoo had a lot of really cool stuff. I like that slide guitar. And oh, you know what? Now Rose Tattoo, we're talking about Aussie bands and new bands. Dude, the Chats, it's like kind of like lo-fi garage punk. I don't even know what you'd categorize that. Just rock and roll. The Chats are great. Emil and the Sniffers. Yeah, there's some good tunes there. Viagra Boys, a band I didn't think that I would like, but I really like a lot. So yeah, I mean, if I could play music on this podcast without getting like strikes or something, that's all I would have is weird stuff playing in the background, you know. But yeah, I mean, what if we could do that? Can you do that? Can you play music? Could you DJ your own show? I mean, that would be fun. DJ a show for 2 hours and talk about all the tunes. Have a live chat where you can talk shit about music, play some bad music in there too. Oh yeah, and the last thing I'll say about my musical taste. I have a playlist on YouTube called Important Music Videos for Bob. And if you want to check it out, I add to it all the time. And a lot of it it was really big, but stuff gets taken down all the time, and it's not my fault, but um because I find the weirdest shit, the weirdest terrible music all over YouTube, and I add it to this playlist. Like I think the Olsen twins, Lot of Rocks got taken off for some reason, but there's a lot of good shit in there. I listen to objectively bad music too, and I enjoy it. The Butcher from the Netherlands were my early 2000s go to. I got to check them out. I haven't heard that. Oh, Netherlands bands. God Dethroned. They were awesome. Peter Pan Speed Rock. They're awesome. Hey Brent, what's the difference between 55 hertz and 75 hertz Celestions, and which Celestions are your favorites? From Nathan. Hey, what's up, man? Well, the number system is a little deceiving, right? Because people hear the resonance and they say, well, 55 hertz is lower than 75 hertz. Yeah, it is. But you wouldn't they're 20 hertz apart. That's not a lot. So you wouldn't really consider one to be trebly and one to be bassy. So it because they don't really produce sound that low anyway. You know, in an electric guitar, you really don't want much below 100 hertz no matter what. So I feel like the 55 hertz cone, if you look at an EQ graph and you look at the lower mid range, where you're probably talking between low mid range, so let's say below 600 and go all the way down to, like, let's say 200 hertz. Because when you get above 700, like 800, that's kind of where that tube screamer spike is. 1K is where a lot of bite kind of lives. 1K up to 3K, and then 5K is like the sweet spot for vocals and all that shit. But the lower mid range seems to be a little bit more richer in the 55 hertz speakers. So it's thicker. It has a bigger body. So in my opinion, I feel like more gain works better for the 55 hertz speakers because the 75 ones can get a little brittle on top, maybe, but it just depends. They're both good, but it also has to do with the magnet, right? So G12H magnet with a 55 hertz cone sounds awesome. Now you can also get a G12M medium sized magnet with the 55 hertz cone. That's again, that has a different sound to it. The heavier magnets tend to have a little bit more power, and maybe they're a little bit more percussive, but it also depends on the gain structure of how you're playing and all that. I hope this is a good answer. I think it just might be too much word salad, you know. So, but long story short, I would just look at them like that. 55 hertz, a little bit thicker in the lower mids. 75 hertz, it's brighter. The numbers themselves don't mean what they say they mean. So there's that. Y'all should do a cover of Bad Boy for Love by Rose Tattoo. Man, I love that fucking tune. Angry Anderson gets bonus points for being in Mad Max movie 2. Dude, you know, I didn't even know that until we played with him in Germany, and I just remember being so dumbfounded by it. I didn't go and say anything to him, and I was just like, I should have just I could have talked to the guy, you know, and I just didn't do it because I was just like, I'm listening to him sing, and I go, that sounds a lot like the dude from Mad Max, you know, and I was like, really? And fucking, because I grew up, I love that. I watched that movie Beyond Thunderdome a million times when I was a kid, and then just like I just saw him on stage, and I was like, that's the same voice. And then I looked it up later, and I was just like, no fucking way. And I just was just I couldn't approach him because I was like, what? Like I had no idea. But yeah, that was cool to see them play. It was very cool. You don't play big label stuff possible. If you get a strike, you gotta take it out. Oh yeah, and then you have like the whole silence behind you and stuff. You know, I do have a whole ton of I've got a whole hard drive here. Is this the one? No, that's not the one. But I got a bunch of these old drives that are just full of music, and it's all like my friends' bands and bands I played with. You know, they might only have one record or 4-song EP, and I put I just ripped them all with the art and stuck them all on a disc because I don't, you know, wanted to keep that stuff forever, which is cool. And I'm in the middle of trying to procure. I have a box of all these old Richmond bands that were kind of around when I was coming up, and now I'm like, and I looked through it a couple months back, and I started remembering like all of these shows and these other bands, and you know, you get older and people just start going away and dying and shit, and I'm like, you know what? I really want all of these. Like I really want I want the Richmond collection because there's so many bands that like I guess I'll close this live with kind of talking about the old Richmond stuff. So I was talking with my friend Chris the other day about it, and Greta, you know, there was the generation that's even my age doesn't remember a lot of the bands like Breadwinner and Slang Louse and Hoes Got Cable, and it's just so much that was so important to the scene, and it was actually really really good. You know, this stuff wasn't. So, and then like of course like later on there was bands like there was like a Hate 04 like hardcore stuff, and that split into like two other bands called Dead Serious and Press Your Luck, and there was God, who was and there was like this other band that they're still around, but shit. I can't remember. I'll remember in a little bit, but like, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of cool stuff kind of happening at the same time, and the majority of these bands didn't do anything, but it would be really cool to actually go back and kind of have that and take a trip down memory lane. And I would love to do like a compilation of like real Richmond punk and metal and hardcore that came out pre 2000 that was disappeared. Anyway, I'm just going to talk all night. It looks like we've hit the 2-hour mark. I appreciate everyone coming out to say hey and join me for the stream. It's been a lot of fun. So hopefully I can do this again. And I'm going to make this a monthly thing. So what are we, the middle of the month? So every 4 weeks, I'll do Friday at 10 o'clock and we'll keep on rolling. And yeah, and sorry about this guitar thing. So that's the goal, is hopefully we'll do I'll do riffs next time. So I may have to start the stream in advance or something like that, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Thanks for coming along for the ride. I really appreciate your support. US Bastards Negligent Discharge comes out June 19th on streaming services everywhere. And fuck, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, forget it. Forget it. But yeah, thanks again. And we'll see you soon.